Welcome to Ill-Equipped History, where two best friends talk about something cool from history.
Yeah.
I'm Morgan. Joined by my co-host, Emileigh.
Hello. You know, at least we think it's cool.
And hopefully, if you're here, you think it's cool too.
Yeah.
It is a history podcast.
Yes.
I got to see some kids excited about history the other day. It was in class, and they were like getting like super pumped and like talking about they're actually talking about the Amiipu tribe that Lewis and Clark encountered on their travels. And it wasn't talking about the Lewis and Clark expedition specifically, but it was about that tribe and another incident they had, and like talking about how, you know, they were renamed Nez Perce, even though that wasn't really appropriate for them. And these kids, I mean, these were like elementary kids, and they're like, oh, history. And I was like, yeah.
Nothing is better than the feeling of watching the younger generation get pumped about history. I don't know why. Maybe it's the nerd in us, but like, it gets me excited when I like show the kids a documentary and they're like, whoa, what is that?
Like, you're learning.
Yeah, my son was obsessed with the Titanic for the longest time. He's like, can we watch where it like sinks? And we have like a couple documentaries we go to about the Titanic. But yeah, I love it.
That's great. Well, anything you'd like to share, Emileigh, before we get started?
I don't even remember what I did today. I'm going to be honest. I had a very uneventful day. I did listen to some of the audio we captured on our in-person investigation of a certain bonus episode for October.
Ooh.
And was laughing at some parts because of just the shit that comes out of our mouths when we forget that something is recording. And we did actually get some really cool stories from one of the people that was with us at the time. So I'll have to share those with you. I don't know if they're going to make the cut or not, but I guess it depends on how much time we have. But there were a few times, I'm not going to lie, because Shelby recorded all of this. She got me. Mm-hmm. She got me good. Mm-hmm. I was into it. And then I could hear them walking into another room, and then they would slam a door, and I would almost come out of my own skin because I was not ready for those big metal doors to slam on the audio. And I was like, ah!
It was like last week when Siri was like,
Yeah. You can't do that when I'm in it by myself. I don't like that.
Oh,
so, turns out I scare easy.
Me too, girl. Me too.
Yeah.
One time, I dropped something and I scared myself when it hit the ground. I was like, so I wasn't expecting to drop what I was I don't even remember what it was. I just remember I scared myself.
I stopped using the toaster because every time I use a pan to toast the bread, I'm just like, it's not worth it.
You need to preserve that heart muscle.
I do. Yeah, I do. It's not, and my son's been getting into jump scaring lately, and I keep telling him to stop, but he won't. And I cannot, in good conscience, look him in the eye and be like, one of these days, you're gonna get hit. And it's not gonna be my fault. Like, because every time I'm like,
you're this close to catching these hands, and it's out of my control completely.
It's a reflex.
That fight or flight, you can't stop it.
Just Oh, that's how you get people called on you.
Yep. Yeah. No, officer, you don't understand. He scared me. He jumped out from behind a corner, and my hand just went pow.
It was involuntary. Are you ready to do this?
Let's do this.
Yeah.
The year is 1914 in Chicago, Illinois. The production team of Mabel's Strange Predicament is taking a break. A 25-year-old Charlie Chaplin is speaking to the director and CEO of Keystone Pictures, Mac Sennett.
I'm telling you, Mac, something ain't right about this costume. It's uninspired.
Well, Charlie, that's what you got. We've only got a few days left to finish filming this reel. If you want a new costume, you got until the end of lunch.
I'll think of something, Mac. Something the audience will really attach to.
Charlie goes into the wardrobe department and muses the costume pieces.
These pants are pretty funny. Oh, they would look ridiculous next to this tiny fancy coat. Ha! Look at these shoes. They're like clown shoes. They'll go perfectly with this tiny derby hat.
Charlie puts the items on and laughs at how ridiculous he looks in the mirror.
Okay, this is definitely on the right track. It just needs a couple last-minute touches.
He grabs a small mustache and a thin cane. The shoes help influence him to have a funny walk, and his natural athleticism brings slapstick comedy to this unique character. In time, Charlie Chaplin's Little Tramp character will be one of the most iconic movie characters of all time. So, Emily, this fictional conversation leads us into our topic of today's episode, the great, enigmatic Charlie Chaplin.
Yay, I am going to be 100% honest. I know who Charlie Chaplin is. I have a clear picture of what he looks like in my brain. I don't know shit about him.
I didn't either until I started researching him, and he is a very interesting person.
He's also very handsome, so...
He is very handsome. He does not look like he does in his infamous tramp costume.
It's the mustache, I think.
Yeah. And he's also, when he's in his costume, he has like very thick eyeliner on around his eyes. And he just looks like a very disheveled person as part of the character.
Right.
But Charlie Chaplin, out of costume, he was clean shaven, had curly hair that was usually like styled very neatly, you know, had like his coat and tie. A proper British man.
Yeah.
So, let's learn about his life and how he became probably one of the most famous movie stars of all time. So, Charles Spencer Chaplin was born in London, England on April 16th, 1889. His father was Charles Chaplin and his mother was Hannah Hall, whose stage name was Lily Harley. They were both performers, actors, singers, and relatively successful in their own rights. I was not able to confirm this, but I saw a Time magazine article from 1998 written by Anne Douglas, who purported that Charles Chaplin may not have been Charlie's biological father.
Oh.
Don't know.
Okay.
I wasn't able to find anything else, and that was the only time I saw that said. And Charlie had an older half-brother named Sidney, who comes in and out of the story a little bit. So, like I said, both of his parents were performers, and Charlie spent a lot of his early years in and out of music halls and theaters. You know, he grew up in it. According to Charlie, when he was 5 years old, his mother was performing, and her voice faltered. And he went on stage and started performing and was a giant hit.
Oh, cute.
So he's always been, you know, built for the stage. The Chaplin family lived in one of the poorest areas in London at the time. And his father, while a talented singer and actor, was also an alcoholic.
Ooh.
Unfortunately. And he died in 1901 when Charlie was about 12.
That's young. How old was his father when he died?
I didn't know how old he was. I didn't see that information, but I can look really quick.
He was born 1863 and died in 1901. So 38. Holy shit.
Yeah. And his mother while, still a performer, she wasn't quite as successful as Charles. And she also really struggled with her mental health. She actually was in and out of psychiatric hospitals while Charlie was growing up. And so Sydney and Charlie really had to kind of fend for themselves and figure out how to live. So they actually, I don't know about Sydney, because Sydney was 8 years older than Charlie. But Charlie he was in and out of orphanages and in homes for destitute children. They didn't always have enough food. They didn't always have clothing. So they were really, really struggling and very deep in poverty. When Charlie got a little bit older, he realized again that he's naturally talented. So him and Sydney both realized they could eke out a living performing. When Charlie was 10, he joined a boys group called the 8 Lancashire Lads, and it was like a little dancing troupe of boys in London.
What a cute name.
I know.
Lancashire Lads.
The 8 Lancashire Lads. He was a very good tap dancer.
Even cuter.
By the time he was 11 years old, Charlie dropped out of school and worked and performed full-time. When he was 12 years old, he performed as a character Billy in different Sherlock Holmes shows and plays that were performing in the London area. And he actually got a bit of a good reputation as an actor in the theater. And then when he was done with the Sherlock Holmes performances, he started doing vaudeville.
Okay.
And we spoke about vaudeville when we talked about the history of country music, but vaudeville is more of like a comedy show. It's got a lot of different things going on, but mostly it's to entertain and make people laugh. Sydney got a job working for Fred Carno, who's a comedian and had his own theater and comedy troupe. And Sydney got Charlie a job there in 1908. So I guess Charlie was like 18. No, he was about 20, I think. Carno was initially hesitant about letting Charlie in because he seemed like very reserved, very shy, and too serious. But actually, Charlie was a really great performer, and his work with Carno led Charlie to perfect his pantomime skills. And he really thrived in Carno's comedy troupe. He thrived so well that in 1910, Carno sent Charlie to the United States on a vaudeville tour as a principal comedian.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool. Principal comedian meaning like head comedian. Okay, got it.
Like the lead comedian.
Right.
And the show kind of centered around his characters. And then the 1910 tour was so successful, Carno sent him back in 1912.
Damn.
And it's in 1912 when Charlie came back to the United States that he was given a chance to perform in a motion picture.
Okay.
Because everyone's like, wow, this guy is great. So he said that he was going to finish his contract with Fred Carno and finish his vaudeville tour, and then he would look into this whole motion picture thing. Because movies were still, this is the early 1910s. Like, movies are still kind of a new thing. So off to the movies. In November of 1913, he joined Keystone Film Company and was making about $150 a week at the time. But he was amazing. And then, like, other companies started trying to fight for him, which we'll see. So he accepted a contract from Keystone, which they made comedy slapstick films. And the motion pictures at the time, since they were still kind of new, they were kind of seen as being working class performances because the theaters were kind of gross. There wasn't air conditioning.
Right.
And it was an enclosed building, so bugs were a really big problem in theaters, and just kind of smelled because, again, no air conditioning, so a lot of people go in and get all sweaty and stinky. So he was really seen as like a hero of the working class when he started getting really popular in these films. And while he was at Keystone, he was contracted to make 35 films a year. I will say, these films were pretty short. They're maybe about...
That's a lot.
These films were about 25 to 30 minutes long. So
okay.
not very long at all, if they were even that long. So Keystone was started by Mac Sennett. And one thing that was kind of a characteristic of Keystone was that when he started it, Mac bought a bunch of old police uniforms that the LAPD had retired. And these are the ones with like the big hats, the long button down coats, and like the billy clubs. That style of police uniform were old actual police uniforms, and then Mac bought a bunch of them and started using them in his films. And that's why like these police chases, like these comedic police chases, were so popular and common in his films.
That makes it. Hey, you work with what you got.
You do. And they were a hit. Like, it was just nonstop, slapstick, high energy, hilarious films, and the public loved them. So Charlie's first film was released in January of 1914 called Making a Living. Mm-hmm. Wasn't great. Wasn't a great film. I've seen it was panned, but I've also seen it didn't do as bad as people say it did. But Charlie Chaplin was praised for his role in the film.
So it wasn't him that was bad. It was kind of...
It was the film itself.
The film itself. Okay.
Yeah. He was actually recognized for his performance, and it wasn't his best, but I mean, it was his first film. He didn't really know what he was doing at the time.
Yeah.
So moving on to, I don't know if it was the next film, but a few films later, they're filming a movie called Mabel's Strange Predicament. And Charlie was not very satisfied with the costume he'd been put in. He just didn't really connect with it. So he was going through the costume department. He just threw together some things that he thought were funny. A tiny fancy coat that's like too small.
Yeah.
Very baggy pants. 2 shoes that were way too big, and a little derby hat with a postage stamp mustache and a bamboo cane. He went onto the set and did these exaggerated slapstick antics, and the crew could not stop laughing.
Hey, that's good if the crew's laughing.
Yeah, they had to like keep pausing filming because thankfully it's a silent film at this time, so you can't hear the crew laughing, but it was just a riot. And this is the first iteration of Charlie's Tramp character, which
is literally what he's known by. I mean, if you think of Charlie Chaplin, that's the image that comes to your mind.
Yes. So I thought this was really funny. So a few days after they finished filming Mabel's Strange Predicament, in the area, there was a boys' soapbox racing tournament.
Yeah.
So Charlie and a couple like crew went to this tournament, and Charlie dressed up as his Tramp character and was just hamming it up, like kept like being like it was the film crew. It wasn't like an actual documentary crew, but they were acting like they were a documentary crew filming the boys racing. And then he kept getting in front of the camera and like just showing off and being a little bit of an ass. And no one knew like what was going on. They thought this guy was just being an ass. And it was hilarious.
Oh my gosh.
So it's kind of setting up what this character was going to become a little bit.
So he's going out there doing live improv just on a whim. Mm-hmm. Were they actually filming any of this, or were they just pretending to film it?
No, they were. I saw when I was watching a documentary about his character, and I saw like some clips of this day when he's like trying to get in front of the camera and like standing, and he's like doing like these very exaggerated facial expressions, and like, and apparently some of the crew that were acting as a documentary crew were like dragging him off like out of the way, and he'd like go right back up, and
that's so
just
funny.
Antics. When Mabel's Strange Predicament came out, and then the soapbox, it was turned into like a movie that was released, came out. People really responded well to this character. You could say audiences were obsessed. They could not get fucking enough of Charlie's Little Tramp character.
Why does he call it the Little Tramp? Just out of curiosity.
At the time, a tramp was like someone who like didn't really have like a home.
Okay.
Was like kind of like a vagrant, vagabond type character.
Okay. Okay.
I think like that's how it was portrayed in the beginning. It was like this little miscreant. And then later it just became a character that didn't really have a set like background. Right. It was just like, this is a character, it's in this movie, enjoy the movie. But there's not really like connectivity between the different films.
Okay. Got it.
Keystone starts becoming very successful because of this character, but Charlie is not really satisfied with the way that Keystone is producing these films, because it's a mile a minute, just nonstop. And he's like, we need room to breathe, you know? Yeah. Like, he wanted more of a story. He wanted more compelling characters, not just running around for 25 minutes, getting more and more and more crazy.
Yeah.
So he started becoming a lot more interested in the equipment being used, the cameras, and he started borrowing from his old vaudeville sketches into the films that were being produced. And 4 months into filming for Keystone, he was given access to film or direct his own film.
4 months? 4
months into working for Keystone. They're like, all right, you can direct your own movie.
How old was he at this point?
Let's see, this was 1914. So he was 25, 26.
Overachiever. Okay.
So his first movie was called Dough and Dynamite, and it was one of his biggest successes under Keystone. So they made this movie on an $1,800 budget in 1914. It grossed $130,000.
Oh my God. In 1814?
1914.
Sorry, 1914.
And I looked up the conversions a while ago and I forgot to write them down. And I'm pretty sure it's 1914 money. The documentary didn't specify, but...
That's close enough.
Yeah.
$4 million.
So I think it was like they produced the movie for the equivalent of, I think, about like $20, $25, maybe $50,000.
Yeah.
And it made $4 million.
Oh my God.
And that was his first directed film.
Wow.
So now we're moving from Keystone to S&A Company.
Okay.
And it can either be S and A, because those are the initials of the two guys that created it, or S&A, ESSENAY.
Okay.
S&A. Either or. So his contract at Keystone ended in 1915, and the S&A Company was like, gimme!
Snatch. I'm gonna snatch you.
So he received a proposal from S&A Productions to join their company. He would earn $1,250 a week with a $10,000 signing bonus to make 14 films in a year.
So he works less and makes way more money.
Not only does he have more money, he would have full creative control, could star in his own films, and would be directing.
Just hand him the keys to the place. Damn.
That's essentially what they did. And his name would also be in the release titles under S&A Chaplin comedies.
They just gave it to him.
Basically.
What?
And he accepted.
You'd be dumb to not accept.
Yeah, I literally wrote duh in my notes. And when Chaplin, or when Charlie went over to S&A, Sidney took his place at Keystone.
Oh, okay.
So, and they actually kept pretty close ties, like good working relationships. I have a picture, I don't know what film it's on, but there's a picture of Charlie and Sidney on a set of one of Charlie's movies.
They are so cute.
I know.
Just two brothers hugging.
They're just hugging and smiling with their mustaches.
Mustaches.
Mustaches. So now Charlie is working for S&A, and he went from Chicago to San Francisco for the studio. And that same year, after SNA got Charlie under contract, they started releasing merch.
Of course they did.
And I have 2 examples in the notes of some vintage Tramp merchandise.
Look at them.
You might have to scroll a little bit. And in the documentary I watched, there was a collector of vintage Charlie Chaplin merchandise. And there was all kinds of stuff. Some of it was not fabulous.
Okay.
Because there were some foreign comics that were produced. And it looked like French languages. And they had like racist caricatures. And then some of the early Charlie Chaplin, like, Tramp merchandise didn't portray him in, like, a super, like, positive light.
Yeah.
Because he was still seen as kind of, like, this mischievous miscreant character. Still very popular, still very funny, but wasn't quite as, like, sweet as he became a little bit later on. Well, it still wasn't, like, a sweet character.
Right.
But a little bit more noble, I guess. If you were a movie theater in the 1910s, all you had to do was put out a cardboard cutout of Charlie Chaplin's character with, "He's here," and you would have a sold-out theater. Like, people were frothing at the mouth to watch his movies. And what's interesting is that in the first few years of his celebrity, he had no idea how popular these movies were, how famous he was. It wasn't until, like, I think he's, like, getting on a train and, like, the people around him just wanting to get a look at him was enormous. And he was like, wait, are all these people here to see me? Like, just completely disconnected from his fame.
He is making art, Morgan. He doesn't have time to connect with his fans. He's making art.
And it's all, like, his little Tramp character. And Tramp lookalike contests started popping up. Allegedly, he entered one and came 3rd.
What? I love when that happens.
I do too. And he was anonymous. Like, no one knew he was really Charlie Chaplin, but it was really funny. And it was so popular, the little Tramp character became embedded in the world consciousness.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone knew who this character was around the world. And these are silent films, so you don't have the issue of, like, really translating the content. Like, anyone can understand slapstick.
Yeah.
It can cross cultures very easily. And, of course, there were imitators and copycats.
Of course.
And when these started popping up, Chaplin sought legal damages against these copiers. And actually, one court sided with him, saying Chaplin's style of Tramp was his own, and a drawing of his character was used in official court documents. Saying, this is Charlie Chaplin's character. This specific style.
Oh my gosh.
So it didn't really stop the copycats, but it did, like, set up a legal precedent for it.
Right.
So while Charlie did have more creative control at SNA, his films started evolving a little bit more. He started adding more complexity to the stories within films. It wasn't just mile-a-minute slapstick.
Right.
There was, like, a plot, and there was emotion in it. And Charlie Chaplin is a master of comedic timing, partly to his amazing pantomime skills.
Yeah.
Because, again, these are silent films. And while he was at SNA, he came across a woman named Edna Purveyance, which is the raddest name.
Edna
Purveyance.
Oh my God. Her parents named her correctly.
Yes. She was actually a secretary that he just happened to meet in San Francisco, and she became the lead female, like, role in most of his films.
Cool.
And what was really interesting that was mentioned in the documentary, just a little bit about Edna, she was a little bit different than what Hollywood is typically casting at this time.
Yeah.
Like, they were casting, like, like super blondes or like raven black hair women that were slender and like angular features, and then Edna had like a very sweet face, like kind of, she wasn't like extremely slender, but she was still like a slender woman.
Yeah.
But she wasn't like rail thin on like taking pep pills and stuff.
Right.
And she had like little like these little cheeks that were really cute, and she just, I mean, she looked like a woman.
Oh.
And she was in most of these films. You know, things are chugging along. Let's see. And then in 1915, before he, at one point he moved from San Francisco to Los Angeles at the very end of his career with SNA, and he made the film The Tramp in 1915, which again was one of his biggest films.
Yeah.
So after SNA, in 1916, he was even more in demand because he's just a cash cow.
Yeah.
So he signed a contract with the Mutual Film Corporation to make 12 two-reel comedy films at an even higher salary than he was making before. So I stumbled upon this. 2 reels is about 25 minutes.
Okay.
They offered him $10,000 a week.
So he went from like, what was it, $1,200 or something like that a week to $10,000 a week?
A week. With a $150,000 signing bonus.
Yeah. I'd be moving too.
Yeah. And at this time, remember, this is 1916. What else is going on in the world at this time?
The war.
Yeah, the war.
World War
So, with World War going on, historians estimate that he was the highest paid person on the earth at that time.
What?
It's insane.
It's incredible to think that movie company, a film company, would have the income during World War I to pay him that.
Mm-hmm. He was a money-making machine. And it's really heartwarming, I guess, to think about is this kid grew up with nothing.
Yeah.
He literally had to go into orphanages to survive.
Yeah.
And now he's the highest paid person on the planet.
In a matter of
a few years. This is in 1916. So he is 28. Or 29.
We're doing something
or
wrong,
27. Something like that. I know. We need to be silent film pantomime characters with excellent physical ability and...
You lost me at the physical ability. You really did.
Yeah.
You had me until you said physical.
He was otherworldly. Like, his physical... Like, he was not a very tall man. Mm-hmm. He was pretty small. But he was extremely athletic. And, like, just you can... So, there's a short film I watched. I watched the whole thing. It's called The Rink, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a second. And it takes place, like, in a roller skating rink. Well, it's, like, part of it's in, like, a restaurant where he's a waiter. And shenanigans ensue. He, like, causes chaos everywhere he goes. And then on his lunch break, he goes to the skating rink and makes another, like, the villain angry and is chasing him around. And he is just literally on these roller skates. He goes off on one leg, like, holding his other leg in the air and just, like, zooming off on these roller skates. And then as, like, the slapstick comedy goes, he is, like, falling down and getting up and falling down and getting up. And then he's doing these crazy, like, back bends on these roller skates. It's just up, down, up, down, up, down. It looks like he's on a string.
How?
And he was a force of nature.
Oh, my gosh. The core muscles on this man.
I mean, he must have had, like, rock solid abs.
Had to.
Just from this one movie I watched. I'll go ahead and talk about it. It just was really funny. So I wanted to watch this after I heard about this event in the documentary I watched. So, and one Ohio theater wrote an official complaint to Mutual Film Company. Apparently, when they showed The Rink, the audience laughed so much and became so rowdy it destroyed part of the theater. This is part of what they wrote. Quote, "The uninterrupted laughter and the hilarity and shouts of the audience literally destroyed part of our theater. Your film is a menace to cinemas and to real estate in general."
Menace to cinemas and real estate in general. You know you've hit it big when your movie is a menace. Just a menace.
And honestly, it made me laugh. Like, I was watching this, like, silent film that was filmed in 1916, and I was lolling.
Oh my God.
Like, full on, like, belly laughs watching this. It's very funny. Like, this timeless humor where it's just shenanigans and physical comedy, and it's like split second things that are just like, wait, did that really just happen? Oh my gosh, that's so funny. People falling is always funny. It's just, if you have time, I think you can watch it. I think you can watch some of these films on YouTube or Amazon, if you have an Amazon account. Watch The Rink. It's good fun. It's very funny with like a sweet little like storyline, but also it's hard. There's so much that happens. You can't even like really describe the plot, but go watch it.
Okay. I think I will when we're done here.
Yeah, you should. Again, it's only 25 minutes. There's 2 more films that he made. Again, he made 12 total films during his time with Mutual. One of the films was 1 a.m., where he was the only character in this entire movie except for like a cab driver. Mm-hmm. And another one called Easy Street, which is considered one of his best performances. And he also made like The Vagabond and some other really popular films, like very, very highly acclaimed. So when he signed on with Mutual, they gave him all this money and his own crew and his own studio. And they're like, go be free. Go make us money. And people who knew him, and I think he said this, I didn't have time to read his autobiography, but he did write several books about his experience. And multiple sources say that his time at Mutual was the happiest in his life. Because one, he was making, just insane amounts of money.
Yeah.
He was given like a free crew, essentially, a studio, complete creative control over his films. Like, he was the director, he was the lead actor in a lot of his films, or most of them, if not all. And he just had to do 1 film a month.
Damn.
So, and apparently also, like, when he first started, like, he would later go on to write his own scripts, but when he was starting at Mutual, he just flew by the seat of his pants. He was like, let's just film something. And then they'd film, and he's like, I actually don't like the direction this is going. Let's do something else. And then they would do something else. He's like, actually, let's change this. And they would like start completely over from scratch. And I think his film, The Immigrant, again, it's only a 25-minute film, but they had over like 500 hours of film that was used just making this 25-minute movie.
Hey, you know what? If it works, it works.
I mean, he's given basically unlimited resources at this point.
Let him cook.
He can buy all the film
Let
ever.
him cook however he
Let
needs
him cook.
to.
So this is where he's starting to get a little bit of... It'll get worse later, but he's starting to get a little bit of like, what are you really about? So again, World War I is actively going on, and he starts facing criticism that he's not joining the war effort.
Okay.
Because I think the U.S. entered the war in 1917. And people are like, why aren't you going to fight? He's a British citizen. So he's not going to go fight on behalf of the U.S. And in the documentary I was watching, they said that the British government thought that he was just as useful, like, raising money.
Yeah.
If not more useful, raising money for the war effort than, like, being put on the front lines. So he started actively fundraising for, and, like, selling war bonds for the war effort. And he was really good for morale. Like, the troops loved his films and would, like, give him a little bit of happiness in the nightmare that was World War I.
Yeah.
So, 1917, his contract ends with Mutual Film Company, and he becomes an independent producer in Hollywood. He had his own studio, his own crew, and he basically like took over all aspects. He was the scriptwriter, the composer, the director, the lead actor. He did everything.
Yeah. Damn.
And he didn't compose all of the soundtracks, but he had a hand in most of the soundtracks in most of his films. So actually in 1918, he's 28 years old.
Okay.
And he was one of the most recognizable people on the planet at this point. And that same year, he organized a contract with First National Exhibitor Circuit, which was a production company created just to release his films. And his first movie with First National was A Dog's Life, which is considered another one of his most recognizable, most popular films.
You say it's called A Dog's Life?
A Dog's Life. It's about him and a little dog. I didn't get a chance to watch it, but it's really cute and it was really popular. So with World War I still going on, he makes a film called The Bond, which is literally made to like help increase war bonds. And I think also at the time there was like animations that were made with him to sell war bonds. And he like toured, he won like a national US tour with his film. And after that, he released Shoulder Arms, which was a war comedy because he,
of course, comedy.
Does comedy. And it was also very successful. So moving on to 1919, he collaborated with Mary Pickford, Douglas Fairbanks, and D.W. Griffith, and the four of them founded the United Artists Corporation. And the United Artists was a distributor of films, and the artists that were within United Artists could keep their own control, their artistic idea of what they wanted to film. Okay. And they were completely self-sufficient, self-employed. So there wasn't going to be like an outside production company like influencing how
like, hey,
films were made, stuff like that.
I'll do me.
Yeah.
Or we're together.
It was completely like self
right.
But before Charlie could fully join United Artists, he had to finish his contract with First National. So in 1921, he released The Kid, starring himself and Jackie Coogan, who's considered one of the best child actors ever. And I have a picture of the two of them.
He's so cute. In the skit.
He's so cute. So I watched a little clip from this movie. It was pretty funny. So the kid keeps like getting into trouble, and at one point, like there's an older kid who's bullying the kid character, and he fights back and he hurts the bully character. And at one point, like, they start fighting, and then in, like, this little, like, alley area, and a bunch of adults and kids, like, start, like, egging him on and, like, taking bets on who's going to win. And the bully character just keeps being knocked to the ground by this. I mean, Jackie Coogan's character is, like, half the size of this bully character. Like, he's so tiny, and he is just kicking this bully character's butt. And then the bully character's older brother comes on scene, and he's, like, that stereotypical, like, with the bowler hat and the turtleneck with the giant, like swollen chest, like walking around and like trying to start fights, like that menacing character you see a lot in like those older. I mean, like the guy clearly had like some kind of like padding on, but just like the way the chest was shaped, it gave him like a bird chest with like the narrow waist, and he was like, "Hi, three." And then kept trying to beat up Charlie Chaplin's character, who kept, like, outsmarting him and ended up beating him up. It's, again, a lot of physical comedy, but, again, still, in 2024, pretty funny. And after this film, The Idol Class was released, and he was like, I'm going to take a little bit of a break. So he toured Europe for a little while, and he toured with some of his films and was very well received while in Europe. After his tour, he came back to the U.S. and started officially working with United Artists. So I guess he was still with First National during these few years. Yeah. And he cranked out 8 feature-length films. I'm not going to talk about all of them, but just a few. A Woman of Paris was released in 1923. It was his first drama. And it was the first where he did not play a leading role. He actually was an uncredited extra in it.
Okay.
The Circus in 1928. This film was kind of a dumpster fire in its production. The set caught on fire 9 months into filming.
Oh my God.
But and he was also in the middle of a bitter divorce, which I'll talk about later. But he won his first Academy Award for The Circus. And it's considered one of his funniest films of all time. So there is that.
Hey, there's that.
There is that. City Lights in 1931. So this film was released right when sound pictures were starting to become a thing. Mm-hmm. Like talkies.
Yeah.
But he was very resistant to the talkies. His medium was silent film. So he released City Lights as a silent film as this medium was taking on. And it kind of brought back a sense of nostalgia. And it did well. And this was a film where he composed the entire score.
Wow.
Then after the release of City Lights, he went on another vacation for 18 months, toured the world. This was early 1930s in Europe. Things are starting.
Yeah.
So Charlie's political ideas will get him into trouble.
Okay.
When he was seeing the political upheaval start in Europe, he created his own economic and political solution. I got this from the charliechaplin.com website. His idea was, quote, utopian idealism based on a more equitable distribution, not just of wealth, but of work. What does that kind of sound like?
A little bit like communism.
Yeah, just a little bit. That will come back.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So, moving forward to 1936, he releases his film Modern Times. And this was kind of a view of the Depression. Because the Depression was still going on in the 1930s. Other societal issues like poverty, narcotic use, and unemployment. I watched another clip from this film as well. His tramp character is in jail, in prison. And the scene I watched, he's eating next to a big guy, another prisoner, and he keeps like stealing his bread, and it's funny. And then the camera pans, and there's another character who looks like he's sneaking cocaine into the prison. And the prisoner sees guards coming, so he pours the cocaine into a salt shaker.
Oh, no.
And then Charlie Chaplin's character, like, grabs a salt shaker and starts, like, salting his food. And he's like, whoa! Hilarity ensues. He's, like, going cross-eyed, and he's, like, making all these really funny movements, and he's just tweaking.
Oh, my God.
But it's done in, like, a comedic way. And
right.
Then, as the film goes on, like, he's got it all over his face and his clothes. And he's, like, shaking on his head. And he's just like, woo! And hilarity ensues. And he ends up, like, stopping, like, some other prisoners, like, end up capturing some police officers or, like, guards of the prison, like, locking them up. And hilarity ensues, and Charlie Chaplin's character ends up, like, beating up all the prisoners and then, like, releasing the cops, and it's funny, but it was still, like, a look at the harshness of the world at the time. And this was his last silent film.
Okay.
And it was also the last time he used his tramp character.
Oh, I guess he retired it with the... Well, I guess if the tramp was born into the silent film, I guess it would be hard to translate that into the talkies.
Yeah, I think that was like what Charlie's idea was, is that the tramp is historically a silent film character.
Yeah.
And to make him talk, it would change the character. Because that's where the comedy comes from, is the pantomime and the physical comedy. So... in 1940, Charlie Chaplin releases the film The Great Dictator.
Oh, no.
It was a very biting spoof of Hitler.
Oh, no.
And actually, if you scroll down, I have a picture of him in his role as Adenoid Heinkel.
Oh, no! They've got freaking X's instead of swastikas, and like the outfit's the same, the mustache is the same.
Yeah.
He's even got his arm up. It's not like straight up and forward, but it's back, like a backwards gay hand. You know?
It's yeah. So his character was the dictator of Tomania and wanted to conquer the world. I saw another, I didn't write it down, but there's another character who was like a spoof of Mussolini from the Empire of Bacteria. He was ripping into him. And Charlie Chaplin, for some reason, had a reputation at the time of being Jewish. He was not Jewish. He said, quote, "I do not have that pleasure." But he used his reputation as a Jewish man to, like, kind of bring emotion into it. So not only does he play this dictator character, he also plays a Jewish barber in the movie. And this is a very sympathetic character. The barber has memory loss after the First War and is basically dumped into an anti-Semitic country following an extensive hospital stay. His role as the barber is very, very powerful. At the end of the film, he has a very, very moving speech about just, in short, like, we're all in a society. This kind of hate shouldn't be a thing.
Yeah.
It's a very, very talked about film, probably one of his most notorious. I think nowadays it's received a lot more positively than back in the 1940s when he was actively spoofing a dictator that was still alive and still, like, terrorizing the world.
That's bold. That is so bold.
Yeah. That wouldn't be his last very bold move, though. In 1947, he released a film called Monsieur Voodoo. And this was an idea proposed by Orson Welles, the author who wrote War of the Worlds. And he loved this idea so much that he paid Welles $5,000 cash. $5,000 cash for this idea in 1941.
Oh my God.
It is a dramatized documentary of Henri Désiré Landru, who is a French serial killer who targeted women in Paris.
Oh.
So this is like a black comedy of a fictionalized character of this person, like, targeting wealthy elderly women and, like, killing them and taking their money.
Question. How long, I know the silent films were like 30 minutes. How long are these movies?
These are feature-length films.
So they're...
So, like 2 hours.
2 hours, something like that. Okay, got it.
Yeah. This film did not do very well.
No.
As I'm sure you can imagine. And I think, honestly, like, after The Great Dictator, his movies started... There's a lot of life stuff that happened, but his movies, I think, did start kind of going downhill a little bit. I think he mastered the silent medium, and I'm not sure if he was able to really adapt to the talking films as adequately as the silent films. Okay, so we're going to take a break from talking about his film career for a minute, and we're going to talk about his relationships, because he was in several relationships that were problematic.
Okay.
Charlie Chaplin had a reputation of liking young women.
Oh.
Or girls.
Oh, no, that young?
Like 16.
Yeah.
16, 17, yeah.
We're talking
maybe even as young as 15.
Oh, we're still talking early 1900s, but that's
but
still...
even at the time, that was not seen as okay.
No.
It really started damaging his reputation. So his first marriage was to Mildred Harris. They got married in 1918 when she was 17 and he was 29.
Oh, no.
Mm-hmm. They divorced in 1920 after the death of their newborn.
Oh.
And it was a very bitter divorce. Then, his marriage to Lita Gray. So her real name is Lolita McMurray. And she had actually acted on Charlie's film The Kid when she was 12. So in his film Gold Rush, he hired her again and renamed her to Lita Grey. She was 15, and apparently Charlie pursued her. And 6 months into filming for Gold Rush, she found out she was pregnant. Yeah.
Don't meet your heroes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is like the bad time of Charlie Chaplin. So they got married in 1924 when she was 16 and he was 35.
Ew.
And they were both miserable. It was not a happy marriage. They did have 2 children together, Charles Jr. and Sidney Earle.
We named him after his brother?
I know.
Well,
himself
that's
and his brother. So they divorced in 1927, and it was a rough divorce. It was extremely bitter. So like I mentioned earlier, Lita and Charlie were getting divorced at the time he was filming The Circus. And Lita was ruthless in trying to damage his reputation, and she was using her lawyers to undermine his character and ruin his reputation in the public eye. So after Lita, he married a woman named Paulette Goddard. They married in 1936 when she was 25 and he was 47. And they divorced in 1942. And from what I saw, it was a pretty amicable divorce. There was still stuff going on during that, but it seems Paulette was another, like, she starred in a couple of his films, and I didn't really see a whole lot about their relationship. She was an adult when they married, so I wonder
at least she was 25, thank God.
Yeah. He was still, like, almost double her age, but, you know. And then his last marriage was to a woman named Una O'Neill. They married in 1943 when she was 18 and he was 53.
Ooh!
Apparently they started dating when she was 17, and she was completely disowned by her father when they started their relationship. And her father was a very famous playwright at the time.
Yeah, you're dating someone that's probably older than your dad.
Yeah. And I do have a couple pictures of Una and Charlie. I have a picture of them the day after their wedding and then later in their life. So I saw one source that said, like, when he finally married Una, it seemed to stop the lingering things going on with Lita. She kind of backed off a bit. Una and Charlie had 8 children together.
Whoa.
And they remained married until he died. And they were married for 35 years.
Wow.
So.
Okay. I mean, if it works.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting to see these pictures because, like, this one of their family, and this isn't even all of their kids. This was taken in 1964. They still have 2 kids to go in this picture. And he looks ancient. And there's, like, a little 2-year-old on the couch that's one of his sons.
Oh, my God. And that was in 64.
Mm-hmm.
So she would have been, like, almost 40 at that point.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, good for her. The thought of having more children in my early 30s is like,
No way. So, in addition to the marriages, he also had numerous affairs.
Oh.
One that was of note. Apparently, he had an affair with William Randolph Hearst's mistress, Marion Davies.
Okay.
And for y'all who don't know, William Randolph Hearst was a big newspaper editor. Was it the New York Post?
Oh, I don't remember.
So it's one of those. He's the one that came up with Blame the Maid on Spain. So Hearst shot Thomas Ince at a yacht party when trying to shoot Charlie because of this transgression.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. So, and then there's one more. don't even know how to describe this. Okay, so while he was married to Paulette Goddard, he began an affair with Joan Barry, who's another actress, in 1941. It is alleged he bought her a train ticket to New York, where they attended a party and things happened. The way that Joan Barry puts it is that she says that there were non-consensual group activities that happened.
Oh.
It's unclear, but it did trigger an investigation into Charlie as a violation of the Mann Act or the White Slave Traffic Act. I don't know why it's called white slave, but it's basically crossing state lines for sex work or immoral behavior.
Oh,
human trafficking.
Got it.
So Barry then accused Charlie of being the father of her child, which he denied. From what, this was a Mental Floss article I got this from, it said that she seemed to have some mental health issues herself, and at one point, like, broke into his house with a gun. Like, broke into his house and had a firearm on her person. And by the time all of this made it to court in 1944, 1945, Charlie was married to Una already. So Charlie was investigated for the violation of the Mann Act, and he was eventually exonerated for that. So he was found not guilty, cleared of all charges. And then a paternity test was done with this child. Blood DNA tests were still very, very new.
Yeah.
At this time. And it caused a whole thing. So 3 doctors concluded that Charlie was not the father of this child using the blood test.
Okay.
But Joan Barry continued to pursue paternity charges, even though she had signed an agreement that she wouldn't do so upon evidence of non-paternity. But she didn't really seem to face any consequences for this.
Interesting.
And in the 1940s, when this was all being done, blood tests were not admissible in court. So after 2 trials, a jury determined 11-1 that he was the father and was ordered to pay child support.
What?
And then he tried to appeal this in 1946, but lost. And this ordeal actually led to the amendment of paternity laws in California, where tests and evidence can be used to prove paternity legally. And if the man isn't the father, the case should be dropped.
Yeah.
Because that was the big issue, is that a blood test determined he was not the father, but Joan Barry pursued it anyway, and then a jury found him as the father. But by the time this new law passed in 1953, Charlie was in Switzerland. So, because he had left the United States due to a lot of things, which I'm about to get into.
Okay.
So, the 40s were very rough on Charlie. There was a paternity suit that was going on. He was done with his tramp character. And remember how I talked about his kind of political ideals?
Yeah.
Yeah, that didn't really go so well for him. In the late 1940s, as we know, that was really when this anti-Soviet, anti-communist nationalism movement was going through the United States. And one, Charlie was a foreigner.
Yeah.
He was considered liberal and a humanist, and everyone thought he was a communist. Not 100% sure if he was legitimately a communist, but there were some things that happened that people were like, he's at least a communist sympathizer.
Okay.
And everything, the turmoil around him, and like another thing was that he had lived in the U.S. for 30 years, but he never became a U.S., like a naturalized citizen, so what's going on with that? So it was just too much for him, and he left the United States in 1952 to promote a film. Okay. He was like, I just got to get out of here. I need to get away from all this. And so he went to Europe on a tour. The FBI was in a tizzy. Because, I mean, who was running the FBI at the time? J. Edgar Hoover, who was like super anti-communist. And the FBI was so onto Charlie, they got MI5, which is like the British intelligence organization, to investigate Charlie Chaplin.
Oh my God.
Because the FBI wanted him banned from the U.S. completely. So, 1952, it was found he had donated to some communist organizations.
Oh, no.
and maybe even had like friendships or relationships with people who were identified as being communist and some Soviet organizations.
Oh no.
So, yeah. I found, I did not go through them because there's over 2,000 pages the FBI has on Charlie Chaplin.
That's too many.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
You can go see them there if you go. Let's see. What is the link? I have the link in the show notes. It is vault.fbi.gov/Charlie Chaplin. All right. And you can view all 2,000 documents on Charlie Chaplin from the FBI. This investigation with MI5, the FBI wanted to prove that Charlie Chaplin was a communist. MI5 was concerned that he was a safety risk.
Okay.
And he was found not to be a security risk at all. But the FBI was like, he's banned from the U.S.
We don't care if he's a safety risk. He's a commie.
Yeah, right. So his film Limelight came out in 1952, and it was kind of like sort of autobiographical. It was a film about a music hall artist who no one appreciated anymore. Yeah. His son Sidney was one of the lead roles. And while he was on the boat to London for this film premiere, he learned that his U.S. his ability to live in the U.S. was terminated, and he was banned from the United States due to allegations regarding his political allegiance and the morals, citing that paternity lawsuit that he was in.
Ugh, jeez.
Now he's banned from the U.S. He ended up settling down in Switzerland at Manoir de Ban, which is this gigantic mansion, with Una, and had his 8 children. He continued to make some films, but again, like, the quality started going down. In 1957, he released A King in New York, and it was his response to the political and emotional situation in the U.S., his attitude during the Cold War, or the attitude in the U.S. during the Cold War in the 40s and 50s. It was a pretty scathing response to the attitudes. Mm-hmm. Also, Charlie was almost 70 at this point.
Oh my God.
Like, he was an old man at this point. And then in 1966, he produced A Countess from Hong Kong. It was his last motion picture and his only color film. It starred Sophia Loren and Marlon Brando. I know, right? And several of Charlie's children were in it as well. It didn't do great. It wasn't very highly received. So he just spent the rest of his life at his mansion in Switzerland. Him and Una did eventually return to the United States in 1972 after 20 years. Wow. They went to a gala event hosted by the Film Society of Lincoln Center. And then he also attended the Academy Awards because they were presenting him with a special award in his honor for, quote, the incalculable effect he has had on making motion pictures the art form of the century.
Ah.
Yeah. He received a 12-minute standing ovation.
12 minutes?
12 minutes.
That's like half of his old films.
I know, right? And I can imagine how awkward it was just to stand there for 12 minutes of just people clapping at you. I would just be like, stop it. I would die.
Please no. Yes.
This is a quote from Alistair Cook, who's like a British journalist at the time, quote, he was very old and trembly and groping through the thickening fog of memory for a few simple sentences. A senile, harmless doll, he was now, as the song says, easy to love, absolutely safe to admire. I'm just imagining like
an old man.
An 80-year-old man just being like so overwhelmed with emotion. He just like is trembling. So Charlie remained very fit and healthy up until he had multiple strokes when he was 85 years old. In 1975, he did have to start using a wheelchair. And then he was knighted.
What?
That same year, in 1975, he was finally knighted. So he became Sir Charlie Chaplin. He couldn't kneel in front of the Queen because he was in a wheelchair. And, like, he could barely move at this point. Like, the strokes were really, really getting to him. And also, apparently, he wasn't knighted earlier because of his communist ideals. So I guess enough time had passed by the 70s hit that they were like, okay, I guess we can knight him now. And then Charlie Chaplin died December 25th, Christmas Day, 1977, at the age of 88 from a stroke. And then I saw this in an interview with his son Eugene. Apparently Una died 14 years later at the age of 66, which is just, math ain't math in there for me.
The age of 66.
14 years later. So she was 22 years younger than him when she died 14 years after he died. It's just...
Oh my God.
It's like calculus meme in my brain. But her son thinks that she was really struggling to live without him.
Yeah.
She was completely devastated by his death, and apparently, like, he said she received multiple proposals for marriage, and she turned them all down. She was like, no, like, she didn't want to live life without Charlie. It's just really sad.
That is so sad.
Charlie's story is not yet over, though. Shortly after he died in March 1978, his body was stolen from his grave.
What?
2 mechanics stole his body and held it for a ransom.
I literally just stared off into my drink and was just like, why? Why are people like this?
Apparently, their thinking was they were going to use the ransom money to start their own repair business. And because he had just died and was incredibly wealthy, they're like, we'll get this money easily. So they demanded $600,000 US in 1978. So,
wow,
a lot of money. The theft itself was interesting, you could say. The thieves called the family and altered their voices, like trying to disguise. But then other people were trying to take credit for the ransom or like for the theft, and were like calling to get their own ransoms. And so many people were calling to try to get this ransom money. The thieves had to prove that they were the ones that had Charlie's coffin. And a police officer was like, okay, we're going to track down, we're going to like verify, make sure that this is legit. So he dressed up as the family chauffeur to meet the thieves with a fake ransom. And then a postal worker got suspicious of the chauffeur and like followed him. And the postman was arrested because he was interfering with an investigation that was going on. It was just...
Oh, what a clusterfuck.
It is. And so finally, the police were able to trace a phone call the thieves had made and were eventually led to the wheat field where he was buried. And like the thieves led them there. But the thieves couldn't remember exactly where they buried him. So the police had to use metal detectors to find his body, and the only metal that was on the coffin were the handles. Everything else was wood.
Oh my God.
So he was eventually found.
Oh,
he was
God.
found after 8 weeks.
They just jostled him around.
No, they buried him in a field.
Yeah, but they had to.
But you mean jostled him around like
to get him there?
Yeah.
Buried him, jostled him back.
After he was found, he was reburied, and his body was encased in concrete to prevent this from ever happening again.
Oh my God, yes.
And apparently the farmer whose field they buried him in was pissed that his crops were destroyed, but then when he realized it was Charlie Chaplin's body that was buried there, he put up a plaque.
I would have too.
Charlie Chaplin was buried here for 8 weeks. So it was found in May of 1978, and a fictionalized account of this event was depicted in the film The Price of Fame, which was made in 2014 with the family's blessing. And Charlie's son Eugene and his granddaughter Dolores both appear in the film.
Cute.
So, yeah, Charlie Chaplin is one of the greatest actors in movie history. He's very well known. His home in Switzerland ended up becoming an interactive Charlie Chaplin museum.
Oh, good.
It opened in 2016, and apparently in 2017, 662 people dressed as the Tramp for like just a little get-together hangout thing.
Cute.
I watched a video from The Guardian, and it was like over 650 people dressed all the same. It was very disorienting to watch, but it was still very cute.
Yeah.
That's what I got on Charlie Chaplin.
Do you want to hear a absolute like mindfuck? Charlie Chaplin's youngest child is only 4 years older than my dad.
Charlie Chaplin was born in 1889.
Yeah. And his youngest child was born in 1962.
Wow.
And when did he die?
1977. Christmas Day, 1977.
Good Lord above.
He's 88 years old.
So he had, what, 8?
He had 10 children.
10 children.
10 surviving children.
Right. And then the one that was his, but wasn't his.
Well, I was meaning like the newborn that he had that passed away.
Right. So it's like 10, the newborn that passed away, and then the child that wasn't
by blood
his.
wasn't his, but the jury said it was his.
Oh my God.
I think he escaped paying child support by leaving the U.S.
Oh.
He's just like, no, I'm not paying this. I'm going to Switzerland.
You know what?
Bye.
Do you blame the guy? It's not his.
You know what? I don't blame him. And they only came back for like a week, 20 years later, and then they were gone again. That was the only time they returned to the U.S.
Yeah.
So, it's Charlie Chaplin, everyone. He is a very dynamic person.
Yeah, I went from knowing not shit to knowing all the things. So thank you.
Yeah, all the good and the bad.
Yeah, there's good, there's bad, and there's ugly. People are complicated.
People are complicated. People be people.
That is, one thing that I've learned from doing this podcast is like, you think you know what kind of person someone is, and then you learn that people are very dynamic.
Yeah.
Except for Betty White. She was 100% badass all of the time.
Yeah, just pure gold.
Yes, 100%. So she's not in this, but like everyone else.
Yeah.
Complicated.
There's, black, white, shades of gray with everyone.
Yeah. Well, thank you for this.
Yeah.
I feel like I need to go watch some of his older stuff now.
I highly recommend it. The Rink was very funny. At first I was very confused. I was like, it's called The Rink, but it's in like a restaurant, but it's just shenanigans and antics. It's very, very funny. I was like, there's a couple parts where I was like, oh, I feel a tear of laughter coming to my eye.
Oh, that's
like
good.
Full on belly laughs. Like, and it's like more than 100 years later.
Oh my God. That's how you know it's good.
Yeah. It's truly timeless.
Yeah. And I feel like slapstick is just timeless because think about the improv shows you can go to nowadays. That's pretty much what it is.
Yeah. Physical comedy is one of the earliest forms of comedy we respond to, like babies. If you pretend to punch yourself in the head, babies think that is the funniest thing on earth. They're like, oh my God, do it again. Let me punch you in the face now. Like physical comedy is timeless, and he was a master of it. Yeah. And just like that little waddle that he does, like it's adorable. And when I was watching that documentary, which I'll tell you guys what the documentary is. I found it on Prime. It is The Birth of the Tramp. and it was done in 2019. It's pretty short. It's about an hour, but it goes into like more of his movies, more of his role as a director in his films, and it shows like clips of his different movies, which was fun to see. And when I saw like a clip of The Rink, I was like, I want to watch this because just this one little clip was very, very funny. Let me see if it's on YouTube. So I may, when we're done recording, I may watch another little thing. Maybe I'll watch The Rink again. I don't know.
I still can't get over the age difference between him and Una.
Yeah, it's a lot. I wasn't really expecting that either. It is on YouTube.
Yes.
I'm going to send you the link, Emily.
Please do.
So if you just look up like The Rink, Charlie Chaplin. Okay, you have the link.
Thank you.
It's very funny. 1916. Oh my God. And in the documentary, it was talking about how because his films are so old, a lot of them have deteriorated over time. Because, I mean, it was made on like cellulose film reels. So there's been a lot of effort going into like digitizing and restoring these old movies so they can still continue to be enjoyed. And like they're literally going in by hand and like recoloring and like repairing the images and stuff like in the movies.
That's awesome.
Because like there's like holes in the film where it started to deteriorate, so they like go in and like recolor it black. Because there's, thankfully it's black and white, so they don't have to like do crazy color matches. Yeah. But yeah, highly recommend his slapstick. And I eventually do want to watch The Great Dictator. I think it's also on Prime. I just didn't have time to watch a 2 hour.
We should watch that
movie
together for a bonus episode and like commentate on it.
Maybe we could do like a live watch.
Yeah. With our fans.
Yeah. Let us know if you want to do a live.
Yeah.
We've been talking about this idea for a while.
Literally since we started.
Because there's so many movies that are based on the historic events that we've talked about. And so one of our ideas is, it's just, we're so busy, we don't know if we could do both. But maybe in lieu of bonus episodes, we could do like a live watch party, a movie based on something we've covered already. And then we can like talk about what's true and what's not true.
Yeah.
About what's depicted in the movie. And we think it would be a lot of fun. And we could do it on like Discord and do live watches. We would have to figure that out, but we think it would be really fun to do instead of bonus episodes. But let us know what you think about that.
Yeah.
And then if you want to participate, subscribe to our Patreon.
Woo! Do it. Do it anyway.
Do it. All right. Well, speaking of Patreon, let's get into our socials.
Yeah. Okay. You can find us on Instagram.
At Ill-Equipped History.
Facebook.
Ill-Equipped History podcast group and page.
TikTok.
At Ill-Equipped History.
Gmail.
Ill-equippedhistory@gmail.com.
And Patreon.
Patreon.com/Ill-Equippedhistory.
And guys,
we've got...
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, we've got monthly bonus episodes and maybe these special watch parties.
Yes!
Let us know what you think.
Yes. Please, guys, can you go on, like, share, subscribe, whatever you need to do. I don't quite know how all of it works, but if you could just get us out there, it really helps us a lot, and we appreciate it.
It really does.
Yeah.
We've got a few born and bred fans
Yeah.
that aren't our family or friends.
People like us.
I know.
Ah!
Just for our podcast and not because of who we are as people.
Yeah. And honestly,
it's such a great feeling.
It is. It's the best.
Emily, we have fans.
Are we famous? Oh my God.
Oh my God.
I have to put on big sunglasses to go to town. So, if you're gonna make movies, make sure they become a menace to cinema and real estate in general.
Yes, please do that.
Yeah.
And be artistic, be creative. Don't Go after teenagers.
And maybe don't be a communist. At least not during...
Not during the 40s and 50s in the United States.
That was a bad time.
Not during the McCarthyism era. That's the worst time to be a communist.
Literally the worst.
Oh, boy. All right. Lots of lessons learned today.
Yeah.